Hi, welcome to Ketobiography. I'm your host, Robyn. Today's guest is a leader in metabolic health and a passionate advocate for healthy living. He's a professor at West Virginia University School of Medicine, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, and currently practices in rural Maine. He developed the U.S. Air Force Efficient Running Program and created Freedom's Run Race Series, which provides funds to support health and wellness in his local community. He's a founding member of the Nutrition Coalition and the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, advancing policies on nutrition, diabetes remission, and carbohydrate reduction. His work spans diabetes remission, low carb nutrition, veteran care, and community health. With over 100 marathons and decades of clinical experience, he's transforming lives through science, advocacy, and running. Please welcome Dr. Mark Cucuzzella to Ketobiography. Hello, Dr. Cucuzzella. Thank you so much for joining today.
No, thank you for having me on, Robyn. It's a privilege to be able to share with your group and learn some of the things you're doing too.
Well, I'm just out here banging the drum, and I think that you can understand that too. It's like once we find this way of life, we're doing everything we can to just get that word out there. I know that I did not do you justice in my very short, brief introduction because you do so much more than what I said. But really, I want to talk to you today. It's clear to me, like I went in and I started researching and I was like, what does Dr. Mark do for advocacy for our lifestyle? And it occurred to me that I couldn't pinpoint one thing. It's that your life is devoted to it. And I think being in the military to begin with, you devote your life to service. Then you're a doctor, that's devoting your life to service, and it's just part of who you are. So I'd really like to spend today talking about all of the different things that you do to advocate for a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I think we go into medicine, it's a disease care system now, but I think, I went into it, with really the thought that we want to create healthy humans. It shouldn't be too much out there to think that that's our job, but things have kind of gone a bit sideways in big healthcare. And I think anyone who watches the news, now it's all political. But going back to first principles, we want ourselves and we want our family, our friends, our community. We want people to age in place and stay strong and stay well and have a long health span, meaning like how long are you in your own home being able to get up and down your stairs and carry your groceries into the house. And then one day we leave the earth, and that should not be a 20-year process of chronic disease. Up here in northern Maine, I'll see 90-year-olds walk into the clinic, and they drove into the clinic. And I'm kind of like, why are you here? I'm here for my annual physical. And they're great conversations because I just turn it around. Teach me something about what you've learned about health or how you've lived your life, and it's all the same principles. They kind of ignored the 1980 U.S. Dietary Guideline Food Pyramid memo when that came out. They missed that press release working on a farm I'm up near the Canadian border. They just lived how their grandparents did. But, it's not just food. It's people living in their communities and people maintaining like an active lifestyle. None of these people have gyms or exercise per se. They're just, they have 50 acres of land that they tend to, even when they retire from actual farming, they still have to take care of their land and their animals and, walk a half mile up the driveway to get their mail, so those types of things just keep people well. Old school.
Yes, old school. So we do have populations within the United States that we can kind of look at and study and say this is how it used to be before those guidelines
They're
came
becoming
in.
smaller, unfortunately, because the current, like we'll take my county, it's Aroostook County, which is northern Maine, largest county in Maine, but we have a 42% obesity rate in this county, which is the same as rural Appalachia, West Virginia, where I came from. You're like, wait a minute, like this is the same. And you go down southern Maine, which is kind of a Boston suburb, the obesity rate is much less, about 25%. Every county in the country is only increasing, but, there's kind of like a generational lag. But, it's places that have a lot of social determinants, places that are economically challenged, places that, maybe grocery stores are kind of leaving and dollar stores are coming in, a lot of stress. So similar issues are happening in any part of the country that's dealing with these social areas in Texas. The places that struggle the most economically are going to have higher rates of all these chronic diseases.
And it seems counter, right? Like it seems like these places should be kind of living more on the land, and but they're also looking for the same grocery stores that we have in the cities, and just don't have access to them.
Yeah, and shopping with EBT at dollar stores, and you can get chips and soda on your EBT, the most common things purchased. So same kind of bullets are coming at you and then they eat school lunch. The kids go to school because they're all on free school lunch, and the free school lunch is 200 grams of carbohydrates in breakfast and lunch. Then they go home to whatever snack foods they need. So we're kind of like self-sabotaging the situation with good intentions. Sometimes we don't want anyone to be hungry. We want people to eat. We don't want to restrict food, but we want, how do you fix this? How do you create healthy humans in a way that respects their autonomy, right? So people do have autonomy to choose, but how can we help steer them to better decisions?
So tell me about that. How are you helping that?
Yeah, so we started, it was nice to see up here in Maine, a decade ago, we started a double SNAP program in West Virginia. SNAP is food stamps. So at farmer markets, you can double your EBT card, meaning that's good for local farmers. It's good for local economy. It's good for the individual who is on government benefits for food, that they could go into a farmer market and swipe their EBT card, and $20 becomes $40, and they can get food. But they also learn from the farmers. So that's kind of a small, kind of local way, and the farmer markets up here do the same thing. But really, the big policy is going to, you got to start with the kids. And Nina Teicholz has been the warrior on that. You've got to get into the schools, and you cannot feed children what we're feeding them today and expect them to be healthy humans and be able to enlist in the military, right? So if you look at any community that's struggling economically, 1 in 4 kids in high school is now eligible to enlist. And no kidding, I didn't have money to go to medical school, and why do people join the military? Yeah, you're kind of called to serve, but there's usually, I don't have any money too. And it's like, kids in a single parent home, and they just want to get out, right? I want to go out and see the world, right? The military is an amazing opportunity to do good work and serve. But if you're already medically disqualified in high school, what are you going to do? You're going to probably go work at McDonald's or work at the dollar store. So we're depriving based on what they're set up. It's not the kid's fault. So these kids are hitting high school already too sick to join the military, or any other job that would require, good amount of physical fitness and activity. Say you wanted to be a wildland firefighter or something like that, or even a firefighter, you got to pass fitness standards. You might not be able to pass those standards.
Yeah, we're crippling our future, unintentionally, I guess.
Unintentionally,
we're following the rules, but
other than
we're
the
crippling our
industry,
future.
so maybe there is some intent by big food and big pharma, but that's not my argument. People can, but bottom line is we're doing a lot of self-sabotage in our own communities and things we might be able to control.
And it's not just obesity in our youth, it's other things that, like, say, like asthma, or just like joint issues, or it's bigger, more detailed than just simply obesity or having access to food. Like it's everywhere. It's everything. Every thread you can pull can lead to this kind of demise of what our future should look like as far as the health of our youth.
Yeah, we're not alone. You look at the maps around the world, every developing country, and including probably the biggest hotbed of obesity and metabolic disease is the Middle East, the most wealthy areas. Because if you travel over to Dubai, Abu Dhabi, there, anywhere, it's just modern processed foods, Cinnabons, fast food. People want to live like Westerners, and if you have money, you're getting all this processed food. So their obesity, diabetes, fatty liver, even supersedes ours. UK very high, Australia, New Zealand, the places with more development has more diabetes and obesity. It shouldn't be that way, but kind of look at the maps, and then we have to step back and explain it. I don't think any of us has that one Occam's razor, like it's one thing, it's ultra processed food and that's it, right? Like no, there's a lot of issues that I think lead to it. And it's up to us as, citizens and leaders in healthcare to try to help people understand their situation, as an individual. Why are you in this situation, which might be different than somebody else?
Right. Okay. So I really did want to focus a lot of our conversation today about advocacy. And so saying it's up to us to say these things, like you are involved in just so many things. And I know there's a new one, but it's Coalition for Metabolic Health. At the time of recording this, it was just announced like 3-4 days ago, sometime last week, that this was announced. So I'd like to hear more about that and the purpose and what we expect to see from it in the future.
Yeah, so thankful to the amazing leadership of David and Jan Bazuki, whose son was dealing with mental health illness and found nutrition as a way to help their son. And almost like the Charlie Foundation, how that started with ketogenic diets and epilepsy, to really rediscover that. It wasn't a new discovery. That was Abrams, the movie director, was like, why is no one talking about this? No, we have to raise the tides, let's get people talking about this. Why is no one talking about this? So Jan and David Bazuki, they brought a number of us together to a meetup in Arizona. It was in about March. It was great. It was like 2 days and we just shared ideas, and we had people I'm in that group as, on the grounds, rural clinician, but you're in the room with people who have, 1,000 scientific papers. So you need the people with the academic and research chops. And then you also need people probably like me who are on the ground, just talking to real people in communities and communities of need. Because sometimes the whole academic side, they don't understand what, a mom on EBT card, with 4 kids and no job is trying to deal with. Like, how do they can just get rid of bread. It's like, no, it's not that easy. Well, my people all get rid of, they all go keto, no problem. They check their ketones 4 times a day. No, these people are not going to check their ketones 4 times a day. So, but it's good. So I learn, they learn maybe a little bit from me, but together we all have this mission of reshaping food policy in this country and reshaping education in the country, because you have to educate and then legislate and then ultimately change some of the legislation around food policy. But, and I'm not thinking that in the next, the USDA dietary guidelines, new policy is going to come out and, probably within a month. And there might be a little bit of shift, but it's not going to turn the food pyramid or food plate upside down. But there might be a little bit more lean toward lower carbohydrate, less sugar, less processed food, but it probably won't go far enough. So until that time, you have to educate people in the communities. And then ultimately, we hope, government will catch up and change school menus. Like here, you've got 40% obesity in this school. Let's not isolate or shame the kids, whether the kid is obese, he doesn't get the nice treats. But you can't do that. You basically have to feed all the kids the same thing, but you want to teach them to love the foods that don't create obesity. Bring real eggs into school, bring whole milk into school, bring meat into school, bring vegetables into school, get rid of Go-Gurts and get rid of, Cocoa Puffs, right? These foods are on the list as acceptable foods, subsidized by the US government to feed to your children for breakfast. Juice, chocolate milk, right? You couldn't make this up if you tried. Chocolate milk, according to the USDA, is healthier than whole milk. Chocolate milk has, 26 grams of high fructose corn syrup injected into it. I know you could go on, and it's and if you have a kid and they've got skim milk and chocolate milk as their 2 choices, what are they going to pick?
Yeah, there's no easy pick there. I do have a
they're going to pick
child
the
in
chocolate
school.
milk. It's delicious, right?
They're going to, but it didn't matter anyway because skim milk being the other option is really not.
Because they don't have. They're the 2 options.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I see it, or I used to see it. My daughter now drives, but when I was taking her to school, I would see it every day. These children that are dealing with metabolic health issues, just to put that, I guess, lightly, but they're certainly dealing with it. And unaware of why it's happening. Or then you have the teachers that are saying that the kids can't pay attention in school, so then we're going to start medicating them for not paying attention in school, and it's just
I'll
such
share,
a big
yeah,
thing.
share a couple interesting stories, which really plants the reality of what this is like for a child. So 2 years ago, we started a trial of low carbohydrate diets for children, but they all went to school. And so they did pretty well at first, but one of the waivers that they had to sign, the kid and the parent, right? It's not strict, but do your best, is you have to pack lunch, right? You cannot eat school lunch. But every school that is in my county has free school lunch for all, right? So what we found out in the debrief, right, after the trial is, so the mom would make the kid eggs or something at home, but they would go to school and the free school lunch, which had 100 grams of carbohydrates, was still put in front of them.
Yes.
So what did they do?
They're going to eat it every single time.
Yeah. And then one kid was actually doing really well and was trying to not eat the school lunch. And she was picked on by the other kids because she would bring like cheese and lunch meat and vegetables. And she would come home in tears. The poor kid was picked on. I almost cried. I'm like, wow, how do you win?
I mean, this is an example of not understanding of what's actually
It
going
wasn't like
on
those
in the
kids were
community
mean.
level.
The kids are kids. This is just the way it is for a young child now, having to do something different than their peers. They're shamed and isolated. And think about that if you're like a adolescent girl. It's hard enough for adolescent girls
Right.
these days with social media getting picked on because, you're not eating the free school pizza and you're bringing in a bento box with cheddar cheese and wrapped turkey or something. But that's, sorry to digress there, but
no, I mean,
there's real human stories of what a family has to deal with if they're trying to make change. A couple of the homeschool kids did pretty well because, homeschool, you can control the environment much easier than if they go to public school.
It's so hard in the public school system, and everything is food based. Or being able, the activities after school, they're just one after the other after the other. So the whole culture is to grab a quick meal. So even outside of school, if you want to have your kid involved in stuff, you're not going to be able to be home to cook a nice meal or to sit down for 45 minutes and eat a nice meal. It's just all grab and go all the time, and it's really challenging, that culture that we've created. It's challenging to move away from it. And it's so strange to think that eating something that's maybe closer to ancestral or normal and not processed is the weird thing now. And that's really what we're promoting.
Yeah. So if you have any ideas, share away. But that's what we're working on, with the Coalition for Metabolic Health, so we are really trying to get into policy. And Nina Teicholz is the warrior there. Follow Nina's work. So she is the warrior of food policy and has been really working hard to get the USDA. So if there's any change that's happening in the next go around, we all have to thank Nina for her efforts, massive efforts. Without her, there'd be no change.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean,
she's gaining traction too because she's so smart and she's so good. So she's got the skill set to get into that political space and has the backbone, because they beat you down, and you got to get back up.
Yeah, I don't know how she does it. I do know that she just had a petition out recently because she saw that the new guidelines were going to dismiss low carb again, and she wanted all of us to make our voices heard. So she's always putting something out there for us to get involved with. If it's just signing a petition, it's still something to try to get this to move forward at the government level. Because we're just randomly listening to these guidelines still and not having that education piece on why. So we have our small community, and it is small compared to everyone who follows the guidelines. We're small, and we're trying to move this forward. So how, after you've come up with this coalition, so you're going into government? Is that how this is working? Like, are you guys getting together and going in and speaking with government officials, or are you doing things more at like a community level to get them to go forward and make different decisions?
I mean, I think there's a lot of arms, and it just builds on, you have a lot of branches out there. So how do you get people to understand human health and metabolism? So they're funding research. So the Bazookies are funding research. So we have a pilot study that will hopefully start here in the next 4 to 6 months in nursing homes. So actually giving nursing home patients nutrient dense, low carbohydrate diets, because there's a ton of evidence out there that dementia is type 3 diabetes. So can you actually move the needle in not severe end stage dementia, early dementia? Is that an end game, or can you reverse that, right? So can you nourish these folks better, get them in better metabolism, and actually help their cognition, and maybe they can leave the nursing home. So that's one arm. But if you go through the list of people in there, you've got some just amazing Dom D'Agostino, you got Jeff Volek. So these are premier scientists. So they're doing the hard level science, for human health, the benefit of low carb diets for metabolic illness. So the majority of this country now has insulin resistance, right? It's not the minority. So not everyone in the country needs to be on a low carb diet, right? So there's, probably 25% of the people are healthy humans, and they can, until they're not healthy humans, they can get away with more. They can burn through the carbohydrates. Maybe they're climbing telephone poles every day. They've got a physical job and they're eating real food. Those folks are fine. They don't need our advice. Healthy people don't need our advice, and they're probably not listening to us because they don't need our advice. But the people who are ill are the people who need the government's advice. I mean, would that be fair to say that, it's our obligation as, if we're government and health officials to help give advice to the people who need advice, not the people who don't need advice?
Yeah, and then also thinking about just how expensive it is for everyone to continue to follow the advice that is happening now. And this is adding up to long-term
20% of our GDP is pharma, it's healthcare, and not 20% pharma, 20% is healthcare, but a big slice of that is pharmaceutical products. And now, the GLP-1s will break the bank of the economy, right? So as effective as they are in the right person, if everybody who kind of met FDA criteria for those meds, who don't have support, got those meds, it's game over for U.S. economy. So judicious use of powerful medicines like controlled substances or stewardship programs, there's judicious use of those meds, but now people get it on the internet after a 10-minute conversation with no support, no nutritional guidance, and they stop eating, they lose muscle, and it's dystopia 101, right? You're like, is this crazy, or am I crazy?
Yeah, like we can see the writing on the wall, but why doesn't anybody else?
I know, you're looking around.
Looking around. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people have normal BMIs, go online and they get this med and they lose muscle, and they're a postmenopausal female, already don't have enough muscle to probably sustain them for life. And now they're losing muscle and getting cheerleaded that's good because they're losing weight, and it's being prescribed by doctors. I mean, that's a policy issue, Robyn, is like, medication can do harm, right? And if doctors are prescribing medications off label and it's doing harm, they should be shut down. Right? I mean, we shut down a lot of the pill mills for opiates, right? It took way too long, right? How many people needed to suffer and still do because of that? But here, same story goes again with these weight loss meds. There's a correct use for them for the right patient, absolutely. But there's incorrect use of the med too.
Which also puts the people who need it for the correct use
in
a position where they can't get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So federal payers, insurance companies now will consider obesity as like, that's your fault. You could have a BMI of 60 and they'll say, well, you just need to eat less and exercise more. But yet it'll be given out for diabetes, conditions like that, without even a conversation. Here you meet criteria, but the one who actually needs it the most, so the person who has the most potential years of life lost is that young, severely obese patient, right? That person has a 15-year less life expectancy. This would be your 40-year-old with a BMI of 50, right? They're going to die, and they're being denied the medication because they're just obese, right? It's just obesity. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, read the literature. It's not, these people are like, you name the, mortality risk score, and they've got all of it. But that's another side story. But yeah, so people are being denied the med who really would benefit, and because it's being given out incorrectly, and then they're, kind of all included or restricted.
Yeah, and the sad thing here is, well, actually, I don't know this, and you will, but it seems like the person who is a type 1 diabetic is always the one who suffers. It's the medicine they need, that they need to live. Like insulin gets pulled, or you can't use,
Yeah, type ones
they
would
don't
never
have.
be. Yeah, type
Yeah,
ones are
you
going to
got.
be okay because no one is going to restrict insulin in a type one. Now the cost, unfortunately, Robyn, is becoming unsustainable. So if you don't have good insurance, the cost of insulin now is just off the rails. You're going to spend $600 to $1,000 a month on your insulin, and if you don't have good insurance, they're going to start to ration their own. These are type ones who are insulin dependent, right? They need insulin. So
Yeah,
so they're
that's what I was
they'll
thinking.
suffer
It's
from the
definitely
cost.
you absolutely require it, but then they have this whole other subset of people who are type 2 that could do some lifestyle
Yeah,
change and
they can come
whatever,
off
and
it.
they can come off of it, but the type 1s who can't are now suffering. They're footing the bill. They're ending up having to kind of fight for their life sustaining medications, which just in the scheme of things does not make any sense, and we don't understand. It's just the whole thing. It's just hard to wrap the head around. It's like you can see all this writing on the wall, and yet there's not changing. So you spoke about education, and what I'm finding interesting in listening to what you're having to say is that there is little education on the other side, but people are grabbing it because it's quick. But we're trying to kind of counter that with education, flooding the studies, even in the hierarchy of studies. If we can just get case series out there so that we have something to stand on to go up the ladder and get into deeper studies, flooding the studies, but it doesn't seem to be making that connection yet. So I'm not sure what the question is. I guess it's like, how do we make that connect? How do we make what we're doing on our side counter this very quick fix kind of ideology?
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is there on low carb diets. So if people say there's not enough evidence, you can go to the Public Health Collaborative website. It's called PHCUK. You could link.org maybe. But so they have an area there. It's called resources or references, and they compare low carb to low fat for diabetes and weight loss. And there's like a chart there, every single study published, and low carb wins every time. A couple of them are ties. So, but essentially it's there. Like, what else? So the null hypothesis is what do we assume to be true now? Disprove that. The null hypothesis is low carb works better, not the opposite. Will prove to me that the null hypothesis being high carb works better. No, low carb at a baseline works better. The high carb people need to prove to us that eating more carbohydrates can reverse obesity and diabetes. I think anyone with common sense would kind of know that, well, that doesn't make sense. You're diabetic. You can't handle sugar. Eating more sugar, well, sugar releases, people understand insulin, right? Glucose, or insulin resistance, high insulin state. Glucose rises insulin. So you have to get insulin low to be able to access body fat. Carbohydrates are going to drive insulin. So we're kind of taking it upside down because the government in 1980 created this hypothesis in humans. Well, the low fat diet and eggs is best, and the eggs are going to kill you. So we're taking that as kind of the truthiness, right? What do we believe to be true? But no one before 1980, including these 90-year-old farmers up here in Maine, believed that to be true, right? Like what your grandparents did just traditionally was true. So how do you go backwards when dogma, things become dogma, right? So when something's like entrenched dogma, it takes a heavy lift to change dogma. And unfortunately, when everything government healthcare aligns with a flawed hypothesis, it becomes dogma. It becomes like entrenched dogma. So that's why, the low carb community is rising, right? Like if you look at most searched ways of eating, but we're still it's crossing the chasm. When do the innovators, early adopters, shift over to things, oh, this is just the way it is, the herd majority, so we're still kind of not at that moment where like everyone just assumes this to be true. We got a little bit of ways to go, but you have a lot of early adopters now, before you cross that chasm to, more mainstream.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to think that the amount of people that we are surrounded by, it feels like a huge community, but it's still
early adopters.
It's still the
in the
early
big picture.
adopters, exactly.
Yes.
Like we are the ones that are making this change. So speaking of that, what are some things that we, the individual, can do to be part of this change?
Yeah, and just to frame, like, how long does this? So Robert Lustig, I remember him talking at a conference like 8 years ago, and he's like, it's about a 30-year process to go from that innovators, early adopters, into this is just the way it is. And 8 years ago, he said we were at about year 8. So I think I'm pretty close there. So we got like 15 more years of work to do. So I know I'm optimistic, right? So like, okay, well, that's good. At least there's hope, right? It's not 100 more years, but maybe, social media, open access now. I think change happens quicker now because of social media and because of the internet and open access medical articles, but again, you get misinformation is out there as much as real information. So maybe it can backfire too. So as an individual, you need a good healthcare clinician to help you understand what your issue is. Not everyone needs to eat a low carb ketogenic diet. Right, it could backfire on some people. What are your issues? Do you have sleep apnea? Do you have other? Maybe it's not about the diet. Maybe stress, went through a divorce. Kids going through medical issues or social issues. Genetics. You were 300 pounds at the end of high school. You've got a different issue than someone who gained weight later. So it takes. I'm an obesity medicine doctor. So it's a full board certification now, and that just gets you in the door. But you have to see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patients before you even begin to get a clue at what might be going on. And you learn every day. So go speak with someone, ideally face to face, that knows you and your community. But there's some amazing telemed services now too, Tro Collagen, Dr. Philovidia, to speak of, that give really high quality services and will go do a deep dive. But if you're not getting the answer you want at the doctor you're going to, try to seek someone out who understands metabolism. And, the Coalition for Metabolic Health and the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, which is another group I'm involved with. So there's a page on there, like Find a Doctor, of people who have gone through the training to understand insulin resistance. Nutrition Network, Dr. Tim Noakes, has a curriculum there. So educate yourself. You can do Nutrition Network courses yourself, very legitimate courses. And you, as a consumer, not even a doctor, to learn some more of this yourself. And then you can get some coaching advice. So I know that's kind of long-winded, but be a good trust but verify, right? If you're reading something, but this sounds like it's too good to be true, find some people like you, right? Listen to, scientists and doctors on the podcast, not people that have YouTube video pages who are selling supplements. Right? I think you got to look under the hood, like what's the agenda of that person who's talking to me on a podcast. I don't have any conflicts of interest. I'm not here to sell anything other than go find local produce and local meat in your community. That's where your medicine is. That's your supplement right there.
Yeah, or some really nice running shoes.
Yes, yeah, get out and hike. You don't need to run,
get
but
outside.
Get out and exercise, right?
Yeah.
That's good it's not for weight loss, but exercise is the magic pill for longevity. If you're fit, you're going to live longer, period, right? It builds your muscles. Strength, train, and do endurance, both. Like they both are important. And that could be farming, right? Like just lifting stuff around. But most of us who have day jobs and work in offices, we have to self-inflict the strength training and self-inflict the walking, unless you live in New York City and you just have to walk everywhere.
Yeah, you've got to carve out the time to do those things.
You got to carve out the time.
Yeah.
If you don't have time to move, you better have time to be a sick person and go to doctor visits later. That's a lot of time.
And the resources, because it's going to be an expensive journey.
Yeah, more resources for your health care than over in the corner of my room here. I've got resistance bands, kettlebells, and my own body weight, and I can do every strength training thing I need right there. And I have outdoors right out my door. So
Yes, it
I'm
looks
in
all
northern
sunny out
Maine,
your
so
window.
like it's gorgeous. It's 60 degrees. My window's open here. No air conditioning. You're probably like, no.
No, I actually woke up to 60-degree weather today. It was the
Really?
first
Oh, in Texas.
60-degree overnight that we had. Yeah,
Well,
and
good
I
for
just
you.
ran outside like, this
You're
is
like, I'm going
fantastic.
outside.
But I love heat, so it's actually perfect that I'm here because I go outside in the
Yeah,
heat all the
your
time.
body
But yeah,
likes heat.
I call it my Texas sauna. I just go outside and I don't even
But
move.
it
I have
does.
a
It feels good. Yeah, if you're
yeah,
like a
I
heat
read a
person.
book and just sweat it out every
Yeah.
day. So yeah, most people think I'm strange for doing that, but it feels so good. They just haven't experienced it for themselves. They don't understand.
The sunlight's pretty magical. So that's like another whole topic, that the sunlight, getting sunlight is amazing for our mitochondria and our immune system. So now there's like red light beds. You see all this photobiomodulation, but sunlight is free. So
Yeah, exactly.
again,
Just go outside. It doesn't matter where
go
you are, just go
outside.
outside.
We used
I
to
was
wheel
actually looking
medical
into
patients
that
out.
a lot myself because well, I was in the hospital with a family member in this past year. And as she got sicker and sicker and sicker, she went more into the depths of the hospital. So the first room had a window that
Yes.
could see outside. The second room, the window was further away. The third room had a window that opened up into a hallway. So the light got less and less natural and all that stuff.
No,
Um, and it was just, that's just part of the whole heartbreaking process that happened there. But so I do look at that. It's like it used to be we would have patients just go out on the sun porch and get some
yeah,
sunshine.
they used
And
to wheel patients outside.
yeah,
And if there's actually amazing literature, if you could just search it on your Google, like if you're next, it's same surgery. If you're next to a window in the hospital, you leave like a day sooner than if you're in the interior bed. But there's something, and that's not even direct sunlight. That's just having a window.
yeah,
So just
it's just
like
fascinating to me
none of it's
how
weird
far
or woo-woo
removed.
stuff. It's just all like ancestral. Our
Yeah,
bodies need light.
yeah,
It's
exactly. And we're just so smart. We know that no, it's better for you to be inside with all this medicine getting pumped into your system. Don't worry about that thing outside. That's going to kill you. And don't forget to slather up, because if you don't put all these chemicals on your
yeah.
skin before you go outside, you're going to die.
SPF 50, 12 months a year, but yeah, don't burn yourself, but get a little sunlight. There's
Yeah.
always a sweet spot.
Yeah, I believe that now. I was a firm believer of sunscreen back in the day, and as I've gone more and more into this lifestyle, I'm like, the sun is actually the center of life on this planet. Why are we going to say that it's the worst thing for us to ever experience? And it's
Yeah,
clearly not.
everything comes full circle, just like the eggs, right? Like everyone ate them. It's the most nutrient dense food. Don't eat them now. Multiple publications, even though the government still ignores them. It's like, wait, people who eat eggs live longer. They have lower cholesterol, right? Because eating the cholesterol doesn't raise your blood cholesterol. So, but it's, yeah, again, it's all, am I crazy or is the world crazy? Go back to the,
I
read
think
the
the world is crazy, but
and
that's
a
just
good,
me.
person to read is a, good friend of mine. We've done the Boston Marathon together a couple times. He's an evolutionary biologist at Harvard. His name is Dr. Daniel Lieberman. Right, and just read the book, The Story of the Human Body. And he proposes that evolutionary medicine should be part of healthcare training, right? So nothing makes sense in biology except in the light of evolution. We weren't designed to run marathons and do CrossFit and all this stuff, so our brain doesn't want to do those things, and you don't have to do those things, so yeah, just the great book to read just to help you step back, because these modern diseases, he calls them mismatched diseases. And that could be your plantar fasciitis. It's like, why does my foot hurt? Right? If you go to places like in West Africa where they walk in sandals, there's no plantar fasciitis. There's no back pain. Their posture's good. Their feet are strong. And then you start adapting the human body to a modern environment. That could be shoes. Right now you've got bunions and you've got plantar fasciitis and you've got hip and knee pain because your foot doesn't work. And yeah, so all these type 2 diabetes is a mismatch. You put an ancestral human in a modern food environment and the check will come due ultimately, some sooner than others. Now it's coming due in middle school for these poor kids. because they're,
And
they're
you're
already
all
born. Yeah, they're already born insulin resistant because the mother's gestational diabetic. You're like,
That's a topic that
I don't want to be like doom, right? I'm telling you this because you have control. You listener has the ability not to go down that path. Just,
I think about this frequently, actually, because it's this, if you want to kind of give it an evolutionary spin, it's that, my parents weren't eating this diet. And so I guess I had a little bit more of a fighting chance when it was time, even though I ate, I still ate homemade meals when I was
yeah,
growing up. And it was my generation that evolved into eating more processed food. But then we have the children of people who grew up on processed food and their children's children. Like, what is this doing down the line? And then I think I can't keep thinking this way, but it's hard not to. We're changing at a very at birth. We're changing at conception because the parental host is not the same as it was. And what is that doing down the line? And this is a rabbit hole I try to stay out of because it's just very
yeah,
depressing. So you talked about when you went to this meeting that the Bazookies put together, and I actually have said this to Jan before. She's not just the parent, uh, um, just one person's, but she's all of us. Everybody who has lived with a mental health issue, she's like the mom to all of us. So I just absolutely love Jan, and what she wants to get done, she gets done. So it's
yeah.
exciting to
She's
be. Yeah, she's just
powerful lady. Yeah,
she sure is.
get
But
it
you talked
done.
about when you went to that meeting that you were like more the boots on the ground person. So what are the things that you're seeing and how are you addressing those issues?
Yeah, a lot of it. And Nina Teicholz also was there, and what we're doing in the food environment for children. Because it starts in kids. I mean, probably your 80-year-old 60, 70, 80, you can't really go and correct their situation. They already have stents in their heart. They're on 6 diabetes meds. The bang for the buck is going to come from helping the current and future generation, and then developing the right protocols. Like, what do we need to be? We wait till, for example, in Algier B, there's an iceberg and you're moving, you're the Titanic or you're a barge moving, at like 3 knots toward this iceberg. And we wait till they're fully diabetic. But you could do a fasting insulin on these kids, right? We had a small pilot in children and their average fasting insulin was 40. Now, if you're listening, you're like, well, what's that mean? So insulin means your body is storing, right? So to be a normal, healthy human, your fasting insulin level would be about 5, meaning like your insulin goes down at night, right? We use our own body fat for fuel at night, and you break the fast. This is just a normal human in homeostasis, right? Everything just works. You eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're not. You're not trying to gain or lose weight, but your fasting insulin gets low at night. You use fat for fuel. Maybe you'd even go out and do some chores. If you were a farmer, then you'd come back for a big farm breakfast. But these kids' fasting insulin is 40. So they're like starting life. They're like in their own end zone. And so how do those kids get out of that situation? The reality is those kids would need to actually do some pretty extreme things to lower that. They can't go to school and eat school lunch and lower a fasting insulin of 40. Like, they'll never get out of it, right? They would need to basically be carnivorous or go to a metabolic ward. But, giving those kids semaglutide is not going to fix that. They'll just eat less of the same school lunch, right? So, yeah, they might lose a little bit of weight, but it's not going to fit. 10 years later, 20 years later, they're probably going to end up in the same situation.
Yeah,
So,
we've
yeah,
gone
there's a
from
lot,
telling
but
people that they can't have a stomach, and now we're telling them that they also can't digest unless they have the shot. It's just,
yeah,
and
so
everybody's biting on it. They're like, okay, yeah,
yeah,
I need
mental
this shot.
health is huge, right? So many people now are in, but the solution for a lot of these chronic disease, right? It's the insulin resistance tree. You got insulin resistance here, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, fatty liver disease, cardiovascular disease, mental health, dementia, but insulin resistance is not just the food, right? There's chronic stress, there's lack of physical activity, there's genetics, and maybe, Robert Lustig published the paper last year called obesogens, right? Then there's the unknown unknowns, right? There's other things in our environment, the microplastics and these things that affect our gut microbiome, so not, and we see it, not everyone responds to low carb ketogenic diets, right? There are people that are still struggling. There's other things going on, sleep apnea is huge, night shift work. So you need a good clinician to really try to sort out, what is going on with you as an individual, or if your family, multiple family members have the same thing. I mean, it could be something that's in your tap water, right? Like we don't know, so in the, keto community, if we think, oh, everyone's going to be fixed by just doing low carb, right? That's, good amount will, it's a good start point. But then if it doesn't fix everything, I think there's other things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. That can
to,
definitely narrow it down.
Yes,
you
it's a
clean
good
everything
experiment,
out.
right? You clean up and I'm all better. That's your answer, right? Right there you go. No harm to eat. I had 5 eggs this morning with some avocado and tomatoes in it. I'm good to go, right? Like there's no harm in eating that for breakfast. We need protein. That's non-negotiable. To get that 30 grams of protein in the morning, if you're over the other side of 50 years old, which I am, right? Because we don't want to lose muscle. So start there and then see how you are. But I have a little, kind of little image I show to patients, and we just circle the things that, and you can only chase one rabbit at a time. If your night shift work, stress, poor sleep, eating like crap, not exercising, we can overwhelm people really quick. It's like, well, which of these things can you work on now? It will
I
help
like
you.
that you said that, because everybody tries to do everything all at
Yeah,
once,
you
and then you can't
Yeah.
isolate what it is.
Yeah, you can't control one variable at a time, and let the patient, be the one who decides, because we can't be authoritative with this, right? You can't, like, here, take this, right? There's shared decision making and right of refusal. No, I don't want to do that. Then okay, let's try something else.
Is your practice now a private practice?
No, I'm working at a federally qualified health center, and I'll be doing obesity medicine up here too. So it'll be a mix of just general primary care, family medicine, and what I trained for. But we'll be, because we have such high obesity rates here, we're going to have a carve out obesity clinic up here in northern Maine. So if you live in Maine and interested, you could be from any part of the state, because we can do telemed, because if you're in the state, we can do that. Yeah, so stay tuned, follow me, and once I get that all up and running, we will have a specialty clinic, because there's high need for that. I mean, what other condition, and we have specialists for all these conditions, but what other condition does 40% of the population have? Right, we don't have many, obesity med docs, but yet in my county, 40% of the population has this condition. In West Virginia, 40% has this condition. We need doctors to be able to help people with this. I mean, I can't think of any other condition other than aging, which we all have, right? But 40% of the population has this condition, but yet very few people trained to treat it.
Yeah, and
Maybe that'll change, right? Because, part of our mission in Coalition of Metabolic Health is educate medical schools. You don't need to have, board specialty certified. This should be foundational for anyone who takes care of people, right? You need to understand metabolism.
And I'm assuming then that this
GP,
program is
pediatrician.
very pro you starting a ketogenic clinic for the community.
Yeah, it'll be a metabolic clinic. So we do a history physical lab testing, and if you're hyperinsulinemic, high insulin state, the nutrition branch of that will be lower insulin. So I would say we're an insulin lowering clinic, right? So yes, which would directly translate to lower carbohydrates, but the insulin resistance, we also have to decrease the resistance. Stress, sleep, exercise can help the resistance, but fit it into your life, right? Fit it into things that, you have time for in your day. How can you make this part of your day? But you have to make, health part of your day, or else you're going to need to make time again for sickness later in your life. So you do have to prioritize this to some degree, but make it fit. And you can't, no one has 2 hours a day to exercise. 30 minutes most days, I think you can do pretty good.
Yeah, making everything manageable.
Then you just get more active. I'm at a stand-up desk here, right? Just move around more.
Yeah.
Just get off your tuchus, right? Is that the word? Get off your tuchus and just move. You could be doing resistance bands, sitting here. If you're on a Zoom call, do walking meetings. I talk to people, I put on some headphones and go for a walk. Your brain works better when you're moving too sometimes.
We often say we don't have time to do the things, but the truth of the matter is there's always time to do the things. You just kind of have to rearrange what your normal is to make it work. I did look at the coalition's website, and I did notice that, first of all, it's a huge list of, if you haven't gone to the coalition's website, guys, it's a huge list of people who have come together for all of us to try to drive this forward. But all of the bios there at the end, it says have as a speaker. So I would guess then that's also part of this. You are have basically, because you're part of the coalition, you have agreed
someone
to
wanted, a lot of it could be like this, Robyn, on a video. I'm pretty remote from anything. The resource page is actually really good. So go into that resource page. So all of us have put together documents on very targeted topics, with very short word counts and links and references. So I think that's a good place just to get kind of in lay language some of the disease processes we're talking about. So it's up there at the top, and then you can pick a condition, and I've got a number of them on there that we all kind of took time and wrote up and thoughtfully put together in a similar kind of format to be easy to read.
Easy
because the medical literature is like, if you type in something on your Google search, right, it's like, so if I would suggest that you trust everyone in that list, right? That's me. So every single person in that group I would trust, because they're all like no conflicts of interest people. So and I got to read all of these pieces they all put together. So yes, they're quality pieces that aren't selling you supplements or have an agenda. So our agenda is human health. So start there and share those pages with people. Or read this about the basics of insulin resistance by Ben Bickman. He brought like his whole book into like 3 pages. I like that, right? We're this quick, soundbite world, but very thoughtfully done. And if you want to read more, I put together a couple pieces on childhood obesity and adult obesity and rural communities and primary care training, military veterans. Like, why are veterans getting more metabolic disease? A lot of their hypervigilant stress, post-traumatic stress, right? Their cortisol levels cranked, their backs messed up because of rucking and jumping out of planes, right? So they have all these strikes against them when they get out of the service to just break, and it's not their fault, right? It's not just that, it's more the other factors than the food in that population that drive the problem.
It's very interesting concept to say it's not your fault. And
it's not your
fault, but
it is not your fault.
Exactly.
It's not the kid's fault.
No,
we've been saying that, so you're not doing this,
you're not doing that. Yeah.
And how do you tell an 8-year-old just to eat less and exercise more? Like, it's your fault. Like, you have a willpower problem. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's like cruel. I mean, I use the word with a capital C to even suggest that to a child or a parent, that it's the kid's fault.
No, but we live there.
The fish water, right? Like, it's the fish water, not the fish, right? So think of it like this: like, if 3/4 of the class are failing the test, can you blame the students, or is there something more systemic?
Wow, that's a very good analogy.
One kid's failing the test, we need to go look at that. Maybe the kid's got ADD or a learning disability, or like, if one kid out of 30 is failing the test and they're an outlier, let's help that kid. But if 3/4 are failing the test, 2/3, whatever you pick it, right, then we can't blame the group. It's not the teacher. There's something more systemic.
What's funny, though, I have a student in school, so she's a senior in high school, and I can tell you 2/3 of the class will do poorly on the test, and they will blame the students. So this problem is even bigger than that, because we've really created this idea that it is your fault. So we can't seem to escape that idea, which is why it's novel to say it's not your fault. I mean, it sounds like it's we're just living constantly in this world where everything, we're just going to, let's talk about we could go the use of cardboard, that they're going to blame us for using too much cardboard. Well, the people we buy from puts everything in cardboard. So why isn't it their fault that they're putting it in it's just, that's where we are. And it's just such a hard battle to fight against, because we've just collectively in our minds have just placed it all on our own individual shoulders, and not realizing that it's not our fault. There is a way out. There's more that can be done. You just have to surround yourself with the right people, which is why I appreciate that you have come on today, because you are certainly one of the right people. The list of who's who in this coalition, they're the right people. I love that you expressed to everyone who's listening to go there. I love all these bite-sized things, because it can become very overwhelming. We could read studies, but if you're not trained in reading studies, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. So to have these things in bite-sized pieces, logged and categorized by what you may specifically need more information on, this is a great starting point for a lot of people. So thank you for coming on and explaining all of that.
On, Robyn. We can follow up and do one on the running and exercise later, if that's
yes, absolutely.
Shoes.
Running, exercise, shoes, zone 2 training, whatever it is, there's so much more to
the food first. Ounces lost in the gym, pounds in the kitchen. So if you're listening to this with a focus on metabolism, you can't outrun the bad diet. So start there. Sunlight, fix the mitochondria. Just walk. You don't need to run. Just get out and walk, right? That's all.
I generally ask this as the last question. What would be the key piece of advice you'd give somebody who was just starting out, which you basically just answered, but do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go back into your own genetic kind of lineage, and who was the last healthy person? How did they live, right? So, I mean, now you got to go back like 2 generations. Here's a great grandparent. What did they do? They didn't need doctors. So what basic things did they do? And community and sense of purpose is so important too. We tend to forget about that. So when we extract people from their community and sense of purpose, they don't really have a reason to wake up in the morning. So that could be like, what's your why? Like, why do you want to make change? Like, what is your why? And I think start with that. I think, what was it, Simon Sinek has a TED Talk. It became one of the most watched. It's like, start with why or something. But like, what is your why? And I write that down for people because none of this is easy. And, we kind of look at it, Robyn, like, oh, that's a lot of discipline. No, all discipline is the decision you make today is for the benefit of future me. And then it just reframes it, right? So I ate eggs this morning because, that's better for me than if I ate Pop-Tarts. Took a few more minutes to prepare them, but it's not a hard trade-off. I feel better, right? It's good.
Yeah,
but that's
I mean, you can eat a Pop-Tart right out of the package, but there's nothing that's going to beat a nice hot egg with butter,
avocados,
bacon. Avocado.
Yeah, I had a little bacon in it. Like, I'll do a bacon cook-up on a weekend. I'll cook like 2 packs of bacon and just put them in the crisp them up in the oven and then put them in my fridge. Just throw a couple pieces into the eggs. It's delicious. Yeah, so prep is important too. Like, just don't do cook-ups and preps, and then makes the rest of the week easier.
Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of people who say they don't have time, it's like, well, just knock out an hour on a weekend of prep.
You can see over there, I've got like probably about 30 tomatoes from a farmer market and squash. So I'll eat those before when they start getting too soft, I'll put them in the fridge. But like, go once a week to your farmer market, stock up. And then, oh shit, I got no vegetables. I got a bunch of chard in the fridge. Like, whatever is seasonal is just buy a bunch, do creative things with it.
Yeah, and I think most areas do have farmers markets, and I think that gets overlooked. I know our area has a really nice farmers market, and it's important to go to those places, not just because you're getting healthier food, but you're also sustaining.
Support your farmer. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I'm here in Texas, so we have the benefit of having ranchers all around, so we get
Yeah, I mean,
to
less
buy a cow.
chemicals and all the shit they spray on.
Yeah, I have a rancher that backs into my driveway and drops off half a cow every like 6 months.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, it's a great benefit to the area. I know the rancher, I know how he's raising the animal, all that stuff, all the way down the line, and it stays local. It's a pretty amazing experience, and maybe not everybody has that kind of access, but I think most people have access to at least a farmer's market where you can get some fresh vegetables, and that's 100% going to help this move forward.
Cool. All right. I think that's been
I
a good
think we've
hour.
done it.
We've
Yeah,
covered a
thank
lot.
you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it, and definitely we'll get up with you because I know we need to have a completely separate, at least one more completely separate
Yeah,
conversation.
I have Mondays. I've worked 4 days a week, so we could do a Monday sometime into the fall.
That sounds good. Well, thank you so much. Oh, and before we go, where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm not really on social media much. I kind of stay in the trench, but I do have a website, drmarksdesk.com, and I wrote a book called Run for Your Life, and I have a website for my book, and we have a lot of videos and information there. It's called runforyourlifebook.com. So you can find me those couple places.
Yes, I can say it was
Dr.
a little
Mark's
hard to
Desk and
find
Run
you.
for Your Life book. Yeah.
But it's good. That means you're doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
You
Like
don't
you
need to
get home at
manage all
night,
this other stuff.
Yeah, I don't like getting into social media fights with people. There's enough in the day to
You've made a
wear you
very
out.
good decision there. You stay with it. So
Survival of the species.
exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Cucuzzella. I really appreciate you taking the
Thank
time
you,
and doing
Robyn.
Ketobiography
Grateful.
today.
Bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.